Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Loftus. I'm the police chief here at the University of Pittsburgh, and with me is Scott Ardra. He's an assistant special agent in charge of the Pittsburgh office of the FBI. So what I'll do is kind of go through some events that happened in the last 18 hours, give you a little bit of a timeline if we could. Hopefully that'll bring some things into focus, and then we'll be answering all of your questions. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So at about 11:10 yesterday evening, and if I don't get a time right exactly, I'll get with you afterwards. If you have a question, I'll answer individually if that's okay. About 11:10, a call came in to the city of Pittsburgh at their station number 1. That call, to paraphrase the call, said that there had been a shooting at Hillman Library on our campus here at Pitt. It's an untaped line. It was a regular general front desk line. And the officer who answered that tried to elicit some more information, tried to get a telephone number all the way through. It was a partial telephone number. It was no name given. But the particularly troubling thing of this, and I'll get back to this afterwards, was there was the sound of either gunshots or simulated gunshots that officer could hear over the phone. Pretty much right after that, another call came in when that call disconnected from a different number, and the information was relatively the same, that there was a shooting in the Hillman Library on Pitt's campus. Immediately thereafter, another call came in. And I think it's 3, but it may be more, but 3 calls certainly, where the caller said, hey, there's a shooting on Pitt campus. So what happens at that point is the city of Pittsburgh broadcast this call over a shared radio channel that we have with them. Our units get ready to respond or do respond. City of Pittsburgh units respond as well. So this call goes out at approximately 11:14. Pitt units and City of Pittsburgh units are arriving at the Hillman by 11:15. Some of those units enter through the first floor. Other units enter through the ground floor. There are students inside. Students are being told to leave, sent to safety outside the building, and the officers start a systematic search, a clearing of the building. They move through the building. They determine at one point that the building is clear, no shooters, no victims, and just about that time, or a little bit after that time, another call comes in. Not a coincidental call, but a subsequent call to the first call. That call goes into City of Pittsburgh 911, and it's from inside Mervis Hall. Students are calling, saying that they hear someone in the hallway and they don't think it's the police. So because of everything going on in very close proximity, they think there's an active shooter inside that building. Our folks then leave Hillman, go over to Mervis Hall, and start the process of clearing Mervis Hall. Now, this is important because just about the time that the scene was clearing at Hillman, we were getting ready to put out an emergency notification message. We didn't do that. We held off on that message. It would have been, quite frankly, irresponsible to put that message out, not knowing what was going on at Mervis Hall at that time. That was my call. It's my responsibility. So we waited until Mervis was clear, and then an ENS message went out. Bear in mind, it's a highly dynamic situation. A lot of information coming in, not just from those 3 phone calls, but from a host of other calls, from students, video from students. We're being bombarded, and we're trying to sort this information out to really service our number 1 priority, to make sure that there is no active threat on campus at that particular time. It was largely a response from our department and the city of Pittsburgh. There may have been other agencies involved. I don't really know at that time or at this time. So that's the kind of response that we got. So ultimately, as I said, Hillman is cleared, Marvis Hall is cleared, and we go into the messaging part of what we do. Now, I got to be honest with you, I'm really proud of what we did on the operational side. I'm proud of what we did in concert with a lot of other agencies at Central Catholic a few days ago. Were any of you over at Central Catholic? Those of you who were there, you probably saw in excess of 100 emergency vehicles over there. The fact that alone, that 100 emergency vehicles could get through Oakland and come from different directions and not have a catastrophe in and of itself is pretty remarkable. So we had a great response at Central. We worked through the problem at several different buildings there as we worked through that problem at a couple different buildings here last night. My regret and my responsibility is that we didn't get the ENS message out as quickly as I feel we could have or should have. And that rests with me. We want to service our priorities, as I mentioned before. We want to stabilize the scene. We want to deal with a threat if there is a threat, identify if there is not a threat, and then we want to message folks because, frankly, when you think about it, and you don't have to think about it too deeply, this is terror for everybody involved. It's terror for the people who are in Hillman. It's terror for their families who are essentially spread out all over the world. It's terror for the first responders going there. And our bystanders and people just moving through Oakland. It's a horribly disruptive, and that word really doesn't catch it, it's a horribly disruptive situation. So we're in the process of investigating with our partners. As you know, these incidents have been occurring across the country. The sad thing is there an expectation that they'll stop, or they will stop as of last night? I don't know, I don't think so. I'm open for opinions. So what we will do is try to get better each time. Unfortunately, we're exposed to this. We'll make our response to the incident better. We'll make our response to our community, our constituents, better by way of messaging. Ask away.
When would you have liked to put that alert out? When that 911 call comes in, is that too soon? When should those students get that notification?
It's too soon because we have no idea whether it's a viable threat or not a viable threat. So, like in the Central Catholic case, so everyone went to Central Catholic and then there would be a piece of information that would be parceled out. Someone was seen with a rifle in another building, so that extends the process. So time-wise and geographically, it extends the process. If it were up to me, I'd love to have the message out 1 minute later, which would mean that the situation is stabilized and we've probably discovered that nothing is going on. 60 seconds is not too soon. But it is not realistic, not in this case anyway. So the best I can tell you, we do this and we have a clock running in our head that we want to get this out as soon as possible because we owe it to everybody. I have kids who go to school here. I owe it to them, besides everybody else. So we don't have a set time, but there is as soon as practical to get some information out to get people steered away from the area. And a big piece of that is determining whether it's an actual threat or not.
But don't you want to tell them before you know? Don't you want to tell them when they have to evacuate? Do you have to know that it's clear?
No, we don't have to know it's clear. And that's the piece that we're working on, some interim messaging, some things that we can do to steer people away from the area and do that, and have that not affect what we do by way of the operational part. I think everyone's, I don't know, maybe you don't understand, and I don't blame you if you do, but if I could tell you what happens in this. People saw what happened in Nashville. People saw what happened in Uvalde. People saw what happened at Central Catholic. there's an expectation of our constituents, everybody, that we will go there and that we will go in and we will engage if there's a threat. And if there isn't, we will find out if there is a threat and then we'll report back on that. That's the minimum of what you should expect from us. The maximum of what you should expect from us is to do that as efficiently as possible, as carefully as possible, and then message those results as soon as practical.
How many people were in Hillman? Should the video show quite a bunch of people jumping over?
I don't have an exact number. I don't know that we do. Certainly, did we hear it was in the hundreds? Could have been 200 or 300, I don't know.
Also, video on social media seems to indicate at least 4 sounds that sound like gunshots.
Yes.
Have you seen that video? How many shots were fired, and why were they fired, and was it just the city police who fired, or were campus police they discharged?
Those shots that everyone heard and that we're discussing right now were the result of a tactical action taken by the City of Pittsburgh Police Department. So, and I'm not kicking this down the road. What I'm saying is, as a matter of policy and practice and procedure, I would refer you to them. I've talked to the chief. He knows the inquiries may be coming, and maybe they have already, and they're prepared to answer as they can answer.
Do you know how many shots were fired?
I don't know. 4, it could be 4, it could be 6.
And was the building cleared at that time, or you were in the process of clearing?
They're in the process of clearing. It was right after, I think there was and I don't have this because I don't have a transcript from the dispatchers, but my understanding is if the first officers went in at 11:15, those shots might have been around 11:18, so that was still very active. There were officers inside on the first floor, and this was a contingent that was going in the ground floor. As they were arriving, they were hearing on the radio, they were being told that there were shots being fired inside the building. So their expectation is, not only is this, we use this term, God, it's just become so innocuous, hoax. So, and it's almost the expectation is, when you answer the phone, you can tell it's a hoax, right? It's not a local number or it's kind of clear, quasi-clear that this is not a serious caller. We take all these things seriously. We have to work through these problems, and that's what they are. It's a problem to be solved. So I guess someone like me could say, well, gee, that's a hoax, and let's just treat it that way. But these aren't pranks. These are terroristic phone calls. Nothing less than that. Because you can see what it's done to our constituents.
Chief, you said you regretted not getting that ENS out a little bit
Yes.
sooner. Then, now in hindsight, when would you have done it last night if you had to review this all again?
We were talking about an interim message, and maybe there's something, that we could have done at some point to say, hey, we have, an unconfirmed report of a active shooter at such and such an area. Please avoid the area, stay clear of the area, something like that. And that's my pledge, is we will do things like that in the future if we have to, if we're put in that circumstance.
Our students reported that emergency exits within Hillman Library were closed off or locked. Is it safe to have those emergency exits locked off?
There were 3 exits that were locked and chained. So 1 was on the first floor, 2 were on the bottom floor. Everything on the bottom floor has been locked since December 17th. Because of the project going on there. The one that was locked upstairs was adjacent to another construction area there, and there were signs everywhere saying it was not an emergency exit. So yeah, I understand the impulse is to, and what do we tell everyone in our active killer training, which we do a lot of here on campus? Run to the nearest exit if you can, right? You want to get away. You go to that exit, you discover there's a chain on there. That really kind of throws a wrench in your operational plan. And what those folks did that you described, they moved to another exit. They went with the flow. Our students, I'm not pandering to our student body. Our student body did a great job.
I'm sorry, I got here a minute too late, so you might have addressed this already, but What time did the first call come in? What was the nature of the call? And how many minutes elapsed until the first alert went out to the students? And what did that?
The first call went out. The first call came in at 11:10. The call was dispatched around 11:14. It went into City of Pittsburgh substation, district station that I call from my background. And the first officers are responding a minute later, 11:15.
And what was the nature of the call?
The call was an active shooter inside Hillman.
Okay. And from where was the call coming from?
Oh, I'd love to know that. And I'd love to stand here and tell you exactly
The
that.
reason I ask is about a decade ago when Pitt had that spate of bomb scares, the source of calls became a significant issue. So you don't know exactly where this came other than it was received on a telephone line?
No, this young man standing right next to me is involved in doing everything that he can to find out the source of those calls.
And how many minutes after the first call did the first alert go out, and what did it say?
The first alert did not, bear in mind now, you may have missed this when you came in, but this was a sequence of events. So you had Hillman to be investigated, cleared, and then the call coming into Marvis Hall, Marvis to be investigated, cleared. When Hillman was clearing up, I was getting ready to authorize an emergency notification system message to go out to say, all clear. When we were getting ready to do that, then we were notified by our students in Marvis that there was potentially an issue there. So we had to wait.
The first ENS message that went out had nothing. What was the failure there?
We're looking at, and this sounds trite, but it's the truth. We're looking at everything, right? Everything that we did. If we got there in a minute, I'm really proud of the folks who did that. But if, maybe we could have gotten there in 30 seconds if that's the case. So we're looking at systems and we're looking at people to see what let us down in this, right? So was this a technical problem? Was this a training problem? It may have been. Was it a practical problem? We don't know. We're working our way through that.
What time did that first message? There were messages saying there was an incident, critical incident, and then the incident was cleared. Why was there's a critical incident message when it happened?
Because that's what we discussed. We don't put that message out until we have some determination as to what
happened.
happened.
Between this active hoax shooter threat and the last one?
At Central Catholic?
Yes.
How quickly everything had been cleared. Now, there were probably estimates from my folks, 200 law enforcement personnel at Central Catholic. So that was coordinated and widespread. There were not as many people involved last night, and they were working their way, through that search. You were going to say?
What time did that first ENS, the telling students that it was clear, what time did that go?
12:36? Yes.
The blank one, was there supposed to be something to that? Or was that your-
Thanks for, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. And yes, there was. So, long story short, so if you would go onto a screen for emergency notification system, you would see two boxes. One says short message, the other essentially says long message, right? So there was a lot of information to cram out there. We started to enter everything in the short message box, and there were too many characters, so it didn't fit into that box. So we had to go down and we had to enter it into the short message box. What's left in the in the long message box? What's left is that header that says Pitt ENS message : and that's what went out. And we now bear in mind that those also went out by email and by voice. So all this is going out on those three platforms as well as social media. When we put this out, it's not just confined to text only. So when we knew that there was an issue, which was a minute, because we were all receiving that truncated message, then we adapted, we went back, and we got the text message on.
So how many minutes in total elapsed between the initial call of the evening and when the first ENS message went out that gave an instruction of something?
I invite you to do the math. It was from when the call was received by the Pittsburgh folks, the call was dispatched by 11:14, and the ENS went out at 12:36.
So 11:10 was when the call came in, 14 initially
Right.
dispatched.
Yes.
And 12:36 is when the first campus EMS.
Right. Bearing in mind, as I mentioned, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's things going on during that period of time.
Why weren't nearby buildings put on lockdown like the one last time?
Everything we were getting was confined to Hillman until it wasn't, until that subsequent call came in about Mervis. And then it was, our folks were right on top of that. Bearing in mind, again, as I said, the response to Hillman and then the subsequent response to Mervis were close to instantaneous.
How quickly does it take to put a building on lockdown? Is that not considered automatic?
It's not automatic. It does. It's something that can happen in the comm room. We have a capacity to put buildings in lockdown.
We've had messages coming to our newsroom saying some buildings, to actually lock the physical door, you need a key to lock it from the inside. Are we working to update buildings here to make sure everyone can, if we need to go to a lockdown?
We're always working on that. We're always picking through that. We've been through a whole menu of our buildings. If we have buildings that we can't remotely lock down, there are very few. And we have processes in place for all of those.
You mentioned a moment ago that there was the shots were fired from the Pittsburgh police officer. Can you provide any insight? I know it wasn't your department, but any insight as to why that would have happened and what the standard protocol is?
I can't and I won't.
Were you comfortable with the response by the city police in discharging a weapon in that situation?
Like I said, I don't know all the circumstances. I do know that they launched a very, very complete administrative investigation, very comprehensive last night, and I trust that they are working through all the issues related to
Do you have any
that.
sense, and I'm sorry if you addressed this already, but any sense of overall how many police and how many agencies responded?
I don't know if we had some of the local universities there. I know it was primarily us and the city of Pittsburgh. And I know there were city of Pittsburgh officers from just about across the whole city.
And is it just the city police and the campus police who are investigating this, or is the FBI involved, some other agency?
Investigating what?
What happened last night?
The calls?
The
As
calls.
I said, this gentleman is from the FBI.
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Yes.
And is there some indication that the Central Catholic and the Circle?
I'd love to be able to know that. Just like you would, and love to be able to take action on that. We don't know.
You said when they first called in, they called a desk at Pittsburgh Police, they were trying to chat with them, trying to essentially get some questions about where they are. Did that person seem like they were at Pitt and had any understanding, or did it just seem so?
Certainly seemed that way enough that a police officer was alarmed enough. And then, how odd does this happen? Did anybody in here ever make crank calls when they were a kid? Well, I didn't. So, but you would expect that if it's a crank, if someone's not really committed to that process, one call, how often do you see where there's multiple calls, maybe from the same person, framing something? So not only is the terror in the moment, the terror lasts for minutes. And in minutes in this case, it's not 11:10, now it's 11:12, 11:15. So that's a protracted amount of disruption and concern. And for the responding officers, they should be thinking, this is new, I've never experienced this before, where there are this many calls and then I am actually being advised that shots are still being fired.
Did the caller at Central Catholic also call multiple times? Yeah.
No, and that call came into us.
Oh, it came to Pitt.
It came to here. It came here, yes. It came to our communications room downstairs. As I said, both calls, City 911 from Mervis Hall and to Station 1 for the initial call.
Going back to the emergency exits being locked, does Pitt Police agree with emergency exits being locked despite construction happening? Is that safe?
I think there's a great balance in there, and there's a lot of folks who look at it from an safety and well-being standpoint and construction safety and everything in the university. They look at it, and I would say, and I'm not a construction safety expert, but somebody probably seriously weighed the value of having someone go through a construction area and possibly being injured in some way there, as opposed to closing those exits down. Now, everyone has advertised, as we talked about, That ground floor has been basically shut down since the 17th of December.
Students who did evacuate through the ground floor said there was no reason why there should have been locked because there was no construction tools, nothing like that. Why was that?
I can't answer that. I have no idea.
How many other emergency exits were there for people to come out?
I don't have the number for you. You know, if give me your contact info and we'll try to find out exactly how many are. We'll get you that.
But 2 emergency exits on the ground floor were locked and one exit
On the first floor, the
on
main,
first
yes.
floor. That was not labeled, the first floor was not labeled as an
It was, they were all signed. There was signage there for all of those exits. They were not emergency exits. The signs were clearly posted. They were not to be used as emergency exits. And they were chained. That's how they were locked.
What was the alert given that made all of those students run out? I mean, was there something over a loudspeaker? They all started running out before there was ever an alert.
The officers were inside the building, you know, verbally telling people to evacuate. And, you know, and again, I talked about the students and not pandering to the students, but they did what you would expect they would do. I mean, if it were me, I might grab my laptop or grab my phone and then evacuate or something else. And people, by and large, left their stuff where it was and got out.
How long did it take to determine that the building was clear?
The initial all clear came about 12 minutes after the officers arrived.
How long did Mervis Hall take to clear?
A little bit longer. That call came in about 3:43, and it was after midnight when that was cleared. A couple minutes after midnight.
Do you think the Mervis Hall call was also a hoax, or do you think the students?
No, we think that that was a well-placed, legitimate call from students who had a well-founded fear that something was going on in Mervis Hall. You know, something didn't seem right, and that's what we preach all the time. You know, you see something, you say something, and they heard footsteps in the hallway. For some reason, they decided they felt that it wasn't the police. That's entirely their call, and I don't question that, you know, in any way. And they called, and they did exactly what we would hope folks would do.
Pardon my ignorance, was Mervis like a residential hall? Is that like an education?
Right, very close to, very close to Hillman.
You're about to head into commencement season, which means a substantial number of large gatherings. I'm not to cause undue alarm here, but is this altering in any way your approach to plans for
Of course.
these events?
Absolutely.
Can you
No.
elaborate on that?
And I'm not being difficult because you came in late. No, that has nothing to do with it. Just, no. Really, no. I don't want to elaborate on the number of people we would commit to that operation. That wouldn't be tactically sound. But a big, rest assured, there will be we always have a good presence there, and there'll be even a larger, more complete, comprehensive presence, of course.
Are there any plans to add additional active shooter drills or safety measures for students and faculty in light of the 2 hoaxes?
We will go anywhere and talk, and you know, great risk, I say that. We will go anywhere and talk to anybody about active shooter, active killer training. We've trained over 4,000 people on this campus so far. And, pardon me?
And how many years?
Anybody have an idea when we started that? No? I'll get it for you.
Did you
If
guys
you
sit
can-
down as a department this morning and I guess kind of rehash last night to see what went right, what went wrong?
If you're not doing that constantly, and we rarely, I'll be honest with you, we rarely do something that a lot of people would call and say, hey, that was really great. We don't find a lot of problems with it. We don't look for them. It's those little things, and we don't, you know, I've been doing this for over 40 years. I've been a police supervisor for 36 of those years. It's a very natural process, you know, and we're just never, honestly, we're never satisfied with what we do, investigation-wise, or, you know, even a community presentation-wise, or our folks that go out who are highly trained in active killer presentations. They'll go out and teach a class, and they come back and they get together and say, I wish I would have said this at this time, or got this message across, or hit this a little bit harder. So my answer, what you should expect from me to say is we do that constantly. We do that constantly.
Buildings like Mervis, I know Hillman's open a lot, but would Mervis be locked down at that time? Or can
No.
anybody come and go?
Yeah, it's not.
All night?
It's not locked. I mean, it's limited access, but yes.
You have to swipe in or no?
Yes.
Okay, at that time of night.
Are there talks about introducing swipe access back to Hillman Library like it was last year?
Not at this point.
I saw some people on social media saying CMU Duquesne students got an alert of the incident with more Pitt students. Do you know if that's true? And how they-
We were told that CMU did not issue an alert. I can't comment on Duquesne.
You know, it sounds like you were not contemplating a return to swipe cards, but I'm wondering if that were to be the case, would you run into a legal issue because since this is a public institution?
I can't answer that, but I will say this. If I can back up, when I said not at this time, that might be a consideration tomorrow. And I'm not trying to slough off your question, because nothing. If we're going to sit here and say nothing's off the table when we look at everything we do, then we need to look at everything we do. So I don't know if that's a possibility or an eventuality. I know it's a logistically very difficult to do, but the university will look.
Was there a reasoning behind why the university has fire drills but no active shooter drills on campus?
No. We do. We think our training is what serves us best as opposed to a drill. So let me just typically explain what training might be. We would come to your space, say you worked in a certain area, you inhabited a certain area at the university. We would have a cadre of trainers come over there, and they would teach you the great value of this. They would teach you where you occupy, the space that you occupy, so that you would be accustomed to what's around you. Where's a fire extinguisher that I can potentially use as a weapon? Where are my exits? Where are my sub-exits? Where are all these things going? Where can I hide? Where, just things. Where's a light switch? Is a window feasible or is it not feasible? Is a stapler more than a stapler? When it has to be, yes. So the great value of that is teaching in those locations. That's what really makes this strong, because it's relatable for folks.
But how feasible is that training considering students are in multiple classrooms a day, different buildings all the time, and plenty of buildings have only one exit, windows locked, etc.?
We have a video training as well. It's very comprehensive that people can visit and take a look at on our website. It's very well done. It's the large training that's truncated, and it's really, really worth the time, and it's been exceptionally popular with our folks.
When was that last updated or gotten student input on?
I can't tell you when it was last updated. It's recent because it's constantly evolving.
Chief, the investigation, you said you're including the FBI. What's the FBI's role? Did the special agent want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. We're here to support. We've had a long-standing relationship with the University of Pitt Police. They have a full-time task force officer assigned to our task force, as does Pittsburgh Police, multiple task force officers, and we're committed to working it with them jointly. We can't comment on the investigation, any potential connections. I know that's the big interest. But the main reason we're here today is because we want to show that we'll throw the full resources of the FBI at this investigation all the way through. Then if we can establish a federal nexus, we'll prosecute it. We've had recent successes in Washington State recently. We've had recent success in California with prosecuting hoax threats, interstate threatening communications. There's several violations, use of telecommunication device to commit a felony. It can be done, but most importantly, I'm here to support. I'm willing to stand, here as long as needed to be, showing that that's what the FBI does. We support investigations.
Yours is basically using technology to determine where these come from. And that's
Absolutely.
expertise.
Yeah, as you heard the special agent in charge, Mike Norwell, speak last week, there's technology used to obfuscate detection. We're pretty good at that, as the FBI, as you would expect. And we have tools in place that we can track it down, regardless if it's local, across the state, or international. And, it may not even result in a prosecution, but if we can make contact with that host country and they can disrupt that activity, that's also a success.
This is a little bit of a side issue, but I did want to ask something. If I'm not mistaken, one of the notices that went out referred to this as an active killer situation. By coincidence, maybe, I guess where the bank shooting was a day earlier, it was referred to as an active aggressor. Did that terminology surprise you, use of that versus shooter?
Hadn't heard it before. You know, and what we run into is our training that we put forward, it used to be called active shooter training.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, you had some incidents occurred in places like Norway and other places in the world where firearm wasn't used. So then we didn't want people to get locked into that panacea of that this is a gun-only type of situation. We wanted to have them think broader. So I wasn't aware that they had used that language.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
may
sure.
well have been a coincidence, but just,
Okay.
but no attempt to avoid using the word gun per se, because I'm just wondering.
Absolutely
that
not.
In terms of like
No.
wanting people to react quickly.
No.
Would telling them a shooter versus someone with a knife would be a more effective way to get.
I think killer is a very, very strong word.
Do you have concerns that hoaxes like this could desensitize people to actual emergencies?
Great question. You know, we always think about, you think about several different things, and you're talking about the game planning part of this. So, does it somehow change our response? Does it somehow change the students' response and parents' response and, you know, faculty and staff who are here? We worry about that. Is this a test, you know, for someone who's sitting back to see how quickly do they respond? How quickly do they get to the Hillman, or how quickly do they support Central Catholic? Do they do those kinds of things? And then you think about that, and you think of there are many more devious options that I'd just rather not discuss right now. That you know, we worry about that people are doing this, and it's not just a grown-up's version of some asinine prank. You know, this is not calling someone and saying, "Is your refrigerator running?" This is the big time, and it can't get any worse than this, unless it was an actual incident. And the fact of the matter is, as we're getting the call and going there, we don't know. You know, we have history on this campus, right? We had history at Western Psychiatric Hospital. A lot of people in this police department were here and responded to that particular occasion. We're not tone deaf, and we are not numb to that.
Chief, how hard is it for the Central Catholic, the Oakland Catholic students, and the people on Pitt's campus in less than weeks that they've gone through? I mean, the mental part of this stress.
Yeah, you think about it, and it's not about me in any other way than I just described before. You know, I'm responsible for this stuff, right? And I'm also responsible to my wife, as I said, because we have daughters here, and I'm responsible to them. And they're texting me last night, "Dad, what's going on?" And I can't take the time to text them because we're trying to get some things done here, right? And that's very uncomfortable for me. I didn't grow up like this. You didn't grow up like this, did you? And so under the specter of this, it just didn't happen. And it's not good enough to say this today's world. That's not good enough. So we've got to do everything we can for when these things are over, or what, you know, to solve the problem. And then if folks want to seek counseling, we have a platform for them to do that. We have the opportunity for them to do that on campus. And it's a wise choice if they decide to exercise that.
A decade ago, the bomb threats reached a point where Pitt made a decision to certainly respond to every call, but not necessarily evacuate people. Could you envision something like that unfolding if these become more frequent, or would that just not be a right move?
I can't say that. I really can't.
A lot of students are expressing concern that the repeated and close timing between the hoax threats are trying to highlight the weaknesses in preparation for a potentially real one. Is there any concern or thought process?
Constantly. That's one of the things I mentioned, that we're being tested in some way. And yeah, we think about that constantly. And then you also think, you know, is this a, you look at Central Catholic. If you had 100 emergency vehicles here, including EMS, fire, police from all over, right? All over the county, people were coming here. So that, so if you have someone coming here from McCandless Township, so there's, if not an absence, there's a reduced presence in McCandless Township for policing and for EMS, for all those things. But it was such a major call that it warranted that kind of response.
Do you foresee increased police presence within the coming weeks as the school year comes to a close?
Absolutely. I don't foresee it. We pledge it.
Uniform and just plain plainclothes or all uniform?
Yeah, I think there's, we do have a non-uniform contingent. We have a phenomenal camera surveillance system here that we really rely on for a lot of things. But there's nothing quite like the uniform presence. I may not be particularly comforting to somebody, but we have people who are, and we're glad that we do.
Chief, are there cameras on each floor of Mervis that you might be able to?
I don't want to comment on the placement of cameras.
Students evacuated, from my understanding, fourth floor was like the last floor to evacuate. Is that standard procedure moving forward, or did you find flaws within that system?
I can't really comment on it, I'm sorry. I don't know enough about the specific exit of the building to do that justice. Jared, what do you think?
Anybody else? We're good? You guys just say and spell your names for us so we get those right.
Jim Loftus, Loftus.
And it's Scott Argiro, Argiro, Assistant Special Agent in Charge.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I mean, honestly, great questions, very insightful. Thank you.